How's it going? I'm Jared Gillis. Welcome to another All About RVs. Today, we're going to be talking about gear that we should be paying attention to right now, because right now it's fall and we're right in that sweet spot of the temperatures being absolutely amazing, but it's transitioning and going to be getting colder. So that brings out a whole nother set of gear that we could use for RVing that's going to make RVing even better. So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. So starting off, first on our list is something that I think really shines in the fall when the temperatures can be hot one day and can be cold the next day, and it's having a heat pump on the RV. This is one of those things that I didn't give it a whole lot of thought about it, and then once we had one, I never wanted to go with an RV without a heat pump because it's perfect for this time of year. Or maybe you don't want to fire up the furnace because it's really not that cold inside the RV, but the heat pump is kind of a no-brainer. You can flip it on, get that heat going, and take the chill out of the RV and make it comfortable inside. We do also have our electric fireplace inside the RV, and that's something we'll use when we're in the RV, but the heat pump is the electric heat that I am willing to use when I'm away from the RV. I don't use space heaters, and the electric fireplace is pretty much a mounted space heater, so it's not something that I'm going to use if I'm away from the RV. So if we're out doing something, I can let that heat pump run and keep it nice and warm inside. So this one would be a tough one to swallow if your AC is doing fine, but if you're at a place where you might need to replace your AC, consider getting one with a heat pump because it really does add a lot to the RV and using it in these transition and colder times. Next up is rodent protection and prevention. That's where this 12-volt rodent deterrent comes into play. It's a little device, this mouse blocker, where you connect it up to a 12-volt battery and it's going to deter the mice coming into your RV. I've done a video on all the different pest control that you can try and do on your RV. You definitely want to block up any of those holes or any kind of access point that they have into the RV, but they're amazing. If there's any weak point at all, they're going to find their way in. So if you are putting your RV into storage, something like this can come in really handy. If you're going to be staying in the RV and you have pets, I would forego this while you have your pets in there because this is probably going to bug them as well. But something like this is going to help you kind of fill in those gaps that you might have missed where they might find a way in. This is going to help deter them from getting into the RV. Next up, we have a few options for a big problem that RVs face when the weather starts getting colder, and it's the humidity and the condensation in RVs. They can cause a lot of damage, from water damage to mold, the things you don't want in the RV. And I actually learned something new about a different type of dehumidifier for the RV. And it's an active desiccant dehumidifier. And they work exceptionally well in lower temperatures because the Midea Cube, you actually have like a compressor in there, almost like it's an AC. So it's creating condensation in there and then allowing that water to drip down in there, to where a desiccant doesn't work that way. So it can work in colder temperatures and take the humidity down even lower. This dehumidifier is also significantly smaller than the Midea Cube. Takes up a lot less space. You can see how much it collected just in one night. It has a little window showing you if it's full or not. It stops when it gets full. And emptying it out, it collected a lot of water in one night. It does have a port on the back where you can drain it and have it continuously drain so it's not collecting into the bucket, something you have to empty all the time. So there is that option if you wanted to set it up that way. Now, talking about options, there's lots of different styles out there. So this one's a Peltier. This one is very common and usually really inexpensive, but you're not going to collect near the amount of water in this as you are in a unit like that. And you're still going to require power, not as much power, but you're still going to require power to run this dehumidifier. So this is typically one that I don't really care for because it doesn't cover that big of a space and you still require power. So not quite as effective, but we do have some other ones that if you're going to be off grid that give you that no power option. So first up is Damp Rid, and this is going to be a disposable type of a solution. So you're going to open this up and it's going to absorb, and that water is going to drop into this bottom portion of this container. And then when it's full, you're going to toss it out. The next option is something that can be renewed. So this is a unit that is going to work very similar to this. It has a medium in there that's going to be able to absorb the moisture, and And you can see the beads on top here, and it shows if it's dry, it's orange or yellow, and then if it's wet, it's going to be green. What happens when it's green is you can plug this into a base station and it's going to dry it out. You obviously wouldn't want to do that inside the RV where you just absorbed all that moisture out of, but putting this on that unit for a couple of hours is going to dry it out, and then you can put this back inside the RV. Now these are going to be pretty small, and so you're going to need a handful of these for an RV our size. We need 5 or 6 for our 35-foot fifth wheel. But then we're talking about something that is going to be able to be renewed and reused rather than just tossed out and repurchased. So really interesting solution. So everything that we talk about in this video is going to be links right down in the description to everything, because good gear can be hard to find. And I found these dehumidifiers on eTrailer. They are a sponsor of the channel, which these dehumidifiers can be harder to find, the desiccant, because the other ones flood the market in other areas. So that's one of the things that I love about eTrailer is they have some great gear specifically for RVing. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, now this one is really easy to overlook, and it's an area where you might be thinking that you're protecting the RV, but you might actually be causing damage, and it's a pressure regulator. But this is different than the typical pressure regulator that we're talking about for RVing, because this is the time of year that a lot of people are planning or preparing to winterize their RV. So you're either using antifreeze or using air to get all the water out of the lines. And if you're not paying attention, you might run into a situation where you're putting too much PSI through the air compressor and start blowing out fittings and fixtures, the weak points inside of the RV. But if you have a pressure regulator for an air compressor, you're able to dial it down. Now, if you have a compressor that already has a pressure regulator built into it, you can dial it down. But if you're using one like our Viair system, it doesn't have an ability to dial down that pressure. So when you're opening and closing fixtures to blow out those lines, you might actually be damaging those lines. So this gives us the ability to put it in line with the compressor, dial down that pressure, so as we close those fixtures and open up another one, we're not going to be adding too much pressure and destroying things. So even if you're using antifreeze, I still like to blow out my lines and get all that antifreeze out of the lines. So this guy can come in really handy, especially if you're using the typical compressor that RVers usually have on board to make sure their tires are filled up. This gives you that extra ability to do that safely without damaging anything. The next thing is, what are we doing with our batteries over the winter? So we have a solar setup on our RV and we use it pretty much year round. So that's not too big of a problem for us, but a lot of people put them in storage. So you can even, if you don't have solar on the RV, you can get something as simple as this small little tiny solar panel that will be a battery tender for your battery in the RV. Pretty simple. You put this to where it can get a majority of the sun throughout the day. You connect the other end to the battery, and it's going to give you, what is it, 7.5 watt of solar charging. So you want to make sure that everything else is turned off inside the RV, battery disconnect and all that, and that this is connected to the battery, because it's not a whole lot of power, but it's enough to trickle charge your battery to make sure that it's not going to get depleted and damaged over the winter. That's usually when a lot of these batteries get damaged and you have to replace them more often than you would really like to, because we didn't pay attention to taking care of them while they're in storage and not in use. So great option if you don't have power available and you have the ability to get a little bit of sun, you can keep that battery safe and usable for the next year. If you do have the availability of power, then you can step it up to something like a battery tender or something larger. This is a battery charger that we had from eTrailer, and so this is an 8 amp battery charger. So if we were using that rodent protection that we talked about earlier in the video, this is going to be enough to keep your battery charged up and be able to run something like that without any problem at all. Again, this is going to be for lead acid batteries. For a lot of people that's made the jump over into lithium, your solutions are going to be different, and oftentimes you've upgraded to solar, so it's going to look a little bit different. But for your typical setup in the RV with a lead acid battery, something like this will keep your battery fresh, so it's not going to be depleted and dead for the next season. Exactly what we want to do, thinking ahead so that we're ready for this coming fall and winter season, and ultimately being ready for spring and summer for next year as well without damaging any of our equipment. Now, this one's pretty simple and it's pretty self-explanatory as well. It's a lock for your towable RV, for a fifth wheel or a travel trailer. If you're going to be putting it in storage, having that extra little peace of mind knowing that you've done everything you can to deter thefts from making your RV an easy target, having that lock on there can help protect your RV while it's in storage. And the next two that we also have are storage for the RV. Next up is something we can do to extend the life of our RV and protect it. So first up, we have wheel covers. If you're gonna have it in storage and you're gonna have a side that's gonna get blasted by the sun or being able to protect it from the harsh weather that's coming, wheel covers are going to help you out. Or even if you're going somewhere to winter for the season where you're often in one place for an extended period of time and still using your RV, you can still use the wheel covers to protect your wheels. But we can take it a step further and we can have a cover for the entire RV if you are putting it in storage. And we've never had a cover on our RV, but I do have a few thoughts on it. So let's check out a cover. So now it's a bit early for me to put this on the RV because we have some great weather and we're going to be going to Florida. But like everything on this list, we're preparing for that coming season. And the thoughts that I have on covers is you don't want to do something that's going to cause damage. You're putting a cover on your RV to protect it. So I think there's three things that you should do with the cover in order to make sure that it's protecting your RV and not causing damage. Number one, we can see right here on the front of it, it gives you a caution sticker of the install process. If you make this thing too tight and you try and really ratchet it down, the seams on this could be putting undue pressure on the roof of your RV and then you might cause damage. So it's something that if you're going to install it properly. That's number one. Number two, I would check on it fairly quickly because things can settle, things can get blown around in the wind a little bit, and you want to make sure that you have the proper tension on putting the cover on. It's almost like checking to see if that shirt still fits after you've washed it for the first time. The other thing is you shouldn't rely on this to defer maintenance in other areas. If you need to check the roof on the RV, make sure that all your seals are properly sealed up, you shouldn't be looking to a cover to defer that until the spring. Make sure everything on your RV is sealed up before you put this on here. This one is breathable. It has multiple layers, so if there is any moisture in there, it's supposed to let it vent out so that way you don't get mold and mildew underneath the cover. But that is the last thing that you should do. This is actually number four is you should check on it throughout the season if you're going to use a cover, because oftentimes you can find a small little problem that might just require a small adjustment, but if you let that fester, that becomes into a bigger problem that then requires a repair, which is going to be costly and time consuming. And this one does have access, so you can get into the back of the RV, you can get into the door of the RV, so you can still access the RV itself, get inside of it, and check on things, which is a great feature to have on a cover. It's not like you have to remove the entire cover in order to get to the inside of the RV. So with those four things, I think you would have great success with using a cover and making sure that it protects your RV and you're not going to have any damage. So the list and the links are going to be down in the description and in that first comment of things that I think you should consider during the fall that often can get overlooked, that really are going to help you and your RV moving into the colder season, either using it or putting it into storage. So anyways, I think that's going to do it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope that it helped you out in some way. And as always, if we don't see you on the road, hopefully we will see you next video. Take care.
I've been away for far too long, but now I'm on my way back home. I hear the west winds calling.